I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
If Brittany and I were in Mexico or any country in Latin America and something tragic happened to us, right? We got kidnapped, something crazy happened to us, we would be all over the U.S. media, all over the U.S. media. 3 Americans in Colombia just got carjacked, their Jeep got stolen, and now, the authorities are doing this, and we would be on every news station and everybody would know who we were. The flip side of that is Brittany and I could travel around the world, literally drive on every habitable continent over the next 15 years, have an incredible time, meet amazing people, have incredible experiences, do insane things, and nobody would ever hear about it unless they happen to hear this podcast or happen upon our YouTube channel. The American media will point towards a bad actor when it happens in our country, but when it happens in a foreign country, they will kind of generalize that whole country, and that's false. I'm telling you right now, that's false. We've been traveling internationally, overlanding since 2018, 19, and we've had one negative incident. One, Jason. Okay. And other than that, 100% of the time, people have rolled out the red carpet for us.
That is Eric Highland, today's guest, referring to some of the mass media narratives which don't always reflect the day-to-day world we travel through. Eric and his wife, Brittany, have been traveling full-time since 2014, along with their son, Caspian, who was born in 2016. Yes, he's lived his entire life on the road. This episode you're going to hear today focuses on overland travel. You're going to hear Eric's insights and recommendations for overlanding and vehicle-based adventure travel, including costs and common myths, among other things. But we also have a broader conversation around the pros and cons of full-time travel, balancing the work-travel lifestyle, having a child on the road. They're going to share their top 3 destination recommendations and just a ton more. It's a lovely conversation, and you're going to enjoy it right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little bit of travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And I'm very excited to have Eric Highland here from hourlesslife.com. We'll link up to that. That's the best place to sort of find all of their information, their YouTube channel, all that stuff. And they have a family mission statement. I love this. It's simple. Love, explore, study, share. Those are some fine words to live by right there. I love that. And of course, Hourless Life. We talk about that name because there is an implication of time, and talked about Eric's relationship to time, how that might change as you travel, and plenty more in the conversation coming at you right now. Stick around on the back end. I will share some thoughts around what Eric shared at the top about the media. I'll share a stat that may drive his point home, at least help to. Plus, a shout out. I've got a listener voicemail I want to play for you, and a little reminder based on that. And it's all happening right after the interview. Before we dive in, don't forget zerototravel.com/newsletter. It's where I write the weekly newsletter, which you can get for free just by signing up over there. Okay, here's my conversation with Eric. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers.
Pero yo sé bien que no puedes vivir sin mí. Ya intentamos olvidarnos, pero no resulta. Sé que tú te estás haciendo la misma pregunta.
I should say, first of all, Eric Highland, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. It's wonderful to have you here, and thanks for taking the time to do it.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Super excited to be part of the show.
Well, I am excited to maybe take a little time here to celebrate your nomad anniversary, because I know you guys just celebrated 10 years of full-time travel. Is that hard to believe?
It is, Jason. We never set out to travel for 10 years full-time without stopping. It was just kind of one of those things that happened. Back in 2014, we decided to sell everything we owned and start traveling. And since that time, it's just been one day after another. It's been an incredible thing. Like it hit us. It hit us kind of sideways. We were in Arequipa, Peru, and we were like, gosh, we've been traveling for a decade. It was pretty surreal.
Did you hike the Colca Canyon?
We did not. So I'm a disabled veteran. I've got really bad knees, and my hiking is somewhat limited. I can actually hike up. I can't hike down, and that's a problem. But Brittany and Caspian do a lot of hiking together, and so we capture a lot of that on our videos.
I was watching the YouTube video you guys made about your 10 years of travel, which, by the way, we'll link up to the YouTube station and everything. But it got me thinking about your brand, your website, Hourless Life, and there's all these like time references. I'm wondering what is the relationship with time there for you guys, and how has that changed?
I think what happened was many years ago, just like everybody else, I was involved in, me personally, I was involved in military service, government work, law enforcement. That was kind of my background. And I had the day-to-day job. And I would fight the commute and go to work and come home and not have very much time with my bride and all that kind of stuff. And we decided that we just wanted to spend more time together. And we didn't know what that looked like. Like we didn't know how could we accomplish that if that's our goal, is to spend more time together. And at that point in time, it had nothing to do with travel. It just had to do with wanting to spend more time together. And so we decided that we were going to give it a go. And so we started creating these online entities, because what happened was Brittany and I went to Cancun on a vacation. It was Valentine's Day. And we had just started dabbling, if you will, with entrepreneurial things online that could earn us an income. And I told Brittany, and I said, listen, babe, I know it's Valentine's Day and I get it, but I've got to take my computer, because if we're entrepreneurs, nobody else is doing this for us. Like we have got to do this. And she acknowledged that. And so one day we were sitting out on the beach overlooking the ocean. And Brittany, I think she was drinking a margarita. She was in her bikini. I had my laptop. I popped it open and I captured Wi-Fi from the hotel. Now you got to think about this. This was like 2013, 2012, somewhere around there, right? Digital nomadism was not a thing. Remote work was not a thing. Those just weren't terms that were used back then. And I caught the Wi-Fi. And it was like this aha moment. It was this moment of realization where I turned to Brittany and I said, babe, I can do this from anywhere that I have a Wi-Fi signal. And I was able to send a couple emails. I mean, it was nothing. It wasn't streaming video or anything like that, but I was able to work. And I said, if we can do this here, we can do this from anywhere in the world. And of course, now everybody's like, yeah, big deal, whatever. But back, in 2012, this was just not a thing. And so we kind of latched onto that, and we decided to pursue various entrepreneurial ideas that we had. We ended up creating 5 businesses, ended up setting very small, very modest short-term goals. Like we have to make $200 this week. You know what I mean? And then we continue to set these goals. We continue to set these goals for ourselves until we got to a point where we realized we didn't have to set these goals anymore. We were actually making a living. And it wasn't a lot, Jason. It was modest. Like it wasn't a lot of money. It was enough to put food on the table and to allow us to spend time together. But what was happening was we were spending time together. We were getting that time as a couple to invest in our relationship. And fast forward, we got very good at what we did. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but essentially we went from part of our job was we were like a boutique social media marketing agency. We would help companies with their social media. So if you had a company and you wanted to be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we would take over those platforms for you. You would pay us a fee, and we would be the voice of your company, learning the tone of your company, the vision of your company, the mission of your company, and speaking as your company. And of course, we started out with mom and pop shops, but fast forward about 5-6 years, we were handling Fortune 500 companies, and we were very good at what we did, and we were making really good money. And at that point in time, we weren't spending any more time together because all we were doing was working.
It flipped.
It did. It flipped. And so it was this time that one of our largest clients, actually our second largest client, called me up, and they essentially fired us. But they didn't fire us because we had done anything wrong. They fired us because the principal at the company had passed away, and he had left the company to his 5 children, who had decided to dissolve the company, which, is great for them and the way they moved forward with that. But for us, it took a sizable chunk of income out of our pocket. And we had a waiting list. We had a waiting list of people that wanted to work with us. And I freaked out. I freaked out. I was like, Brittany, what are we going to do? We got to bring on like 3 clients to make up for the income that we're losing from this one client. And Brittany, of course, as she usually is, I definitely married up, being the soul of reason, said, hey, let's think about this. We don't need the money. We're making significant money that we don't really need that income. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, all we're doing is putting this in savings. So let's take some time and think about this. And I'll never forget it. We were just outside Carlsbad because we were already traveling full time at this point. We were just outside of Carlsbad Caverns, and we were at this campground, and we were walking around, and there were all these bunnies around. It's one of those snapshot moments in life. And we were counting the bunnies as we walked around the campground. And I just realized that we didn't need it. And what happened was, by losing that client, we got more time together again. And Jason, I'll tell you, that's where it all started. That was the goal. The goal was to spend that time together. And so when we realized that, we realized not only do we not need that client, we probably don't need a lot of the clients that we have. And how much do we really need? How much do we really need to pursue the dream that we have, which by this time had been traveling full time together? And the reality is, it wasn't much. We really didn't need that much money to do what we wanted to do and travel indefinitely. And we were making enough passive income where we had that covered. So essentially, we came to this realization that we could literally just stop working and just travel. And that's kind of what launched everything.
Yeah. Wow. Where did you guys meet, by the way? Can you share the story?
Yeah. So we met in Texas. I was stationed. I was in the United States Coast Guard at the time, and I was stationed in Texas. We met there, and we knew each other for quite a long time. I ended up taking her from Texas to Seattle, which is where I was from, and got married in Seattle. And yeah.
But where did you guys meet? Were you at a grocery store, or at a?
Oh no, we met at church.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Made a connection.
Yeah.
Is it hard to ask somebody out at church? Is that what are you doing? Hold on a minute.
No, it wasn't like that at the time. We have a very strange story in regards to that. No, I'm 17 years older than Brittany is. So I'm 53 years old. And Brittany is 17 years younger. I'm not going to say her age. You guys can do the math. But no, I knew her parents. I knew her when she was younger, and we just stayed in touch over many years. And what happened was when she got older and I created a business. Brittany's very savvy. Brittany's very intelligent. And we remained friends. We stayed in touch. And then I ended up needing somebody to run my business, like day to day, and to manage those things for me. And so I had asked Brittany if she would come on to do that, and she did. And as a result of working together, and spending time together, of course, now she was in her 20s, I was in my 30s. And we just developed a relationship where she became my best friend, and we ended up, falling for one another and going from there. So,
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, you guys even had a child on the road, which is not something that everybody that travels full time does. A lot of people will either hit pause and go do it. But I mean, you guys have, you've lived your life on the road. I mean, you said it in the video, and it's true that, it ceases to become travel when you're doing it full time like this. It's just your life now. Right.
Right.
And he doesn't know any other life. That's been the life that he knows. Yeah.
No, our son Caspian went straight from the birthing room of the hospital to our Jeep, and he has never lived in a house. And so this is really interesting about Caspian. I could talk about Caspian all day, but essentially he is probably one of the most well-traveled human beings on the planet for his age, because he's never lived in a house. And the wonders that he has seen in his short lifetime have been incredible. And one of the biggest beauties of this journey is to see the world through his eyes, right? Like I was just telling you that we're right now in Cusco, Peru, right before we got on the call. And we went to these Incan ruins. And on these Incan ruins, there's this slide, if you will. It's made out of these natural rocks that the Incan children would slide down as part of their fun, And even our guide that was taking us around the ruins said that when he was a child, he would go up there, and he was in his 70s. So, just like 70 years ago, this guy was sliding down these rocks, and his Incan ancestors were sliding down these rocks, and now Caspian sliding down these rocks. And just to see him sliding down rocks that, Incan children were sliding down yesterday, and the joy that he had, and that is just precious.
Visiting the ancient playgrounds of Peru. As you know, just from your time on the road, it's, all of these things come with trade-offs, right? Like we said, this is life. It's not travel, and life can be messy. I'm just wondering, that you guys have had a chance to reflect on this now, and having raised a kid on the road and everything like that, what do you think are some of the pros and cons right now for you guys of full-time travel? I mean, we know the pros in a way, right? I mean, it's seeing the world, things that you just described, but maybe there's the other side that, the struggles.
Yeah, no. So one of the things that I did want to touch on regarding this is that from the pro side, I think what a lot of people don't consider for full-time travel. And when I say full-time travel, I mean full-time travel. We don't have a house. We don't have any property. We don't live anywhere. We live on the road. If you were to ask me, where do you live? I live in Cusco, Peru right now. And next week I'm going to be in Lake Titicaca. And the week after that, I'm going to be heading towards the Chilean border, and that's where I live. So like I've said, this is life. It's not a vacation. And I think the pros to full-time travel is that you have nothing ahead of you but the horizon. That's what has changed for us in this understanding. Like every other trip we ever took before, even if it was a long-term trip, let's say a 3-month trip into Mexico, we would go into Mexico, but we knew we were coming back. You know what I mean? So there was always that end date. It wasn't just the horizon in front of you. It was like, hey, we're going to go explore. We're going to have a blast. This is going to be amazing. And then we're going to come back, and we're going to continue to do life back home in the United States. But when we crossed the border into Mexico on this global journey, because we're attempting to drive around the world, it was very surreal. Because we had crossed into Mexico before. That wasn't new. What was new is that we had nothing but the horizon in front of us, and nothing but the unknown. And that is a beauty of full-time travel. That is definitely a pro that I didn't even comprehend until my, 7th year of full-time travel. I didn't comprehend that. But
what about that though specifically? Is it spark your creativity? Is it something about what it does to your energy daily? What is it?
Right. Okay. So yeah, this is great, because what happened was when we started traveling full time in 2014. When we started traveling full time in 2014, there was a spark. Right. It was so new. Like very, very few people were doing what we were doing. We realized that, hey, this is our new life. We're living on the road. And we started traveling around the United States, primarily the United States, and little dips into Canada from time to time, but we went all over. I mean, all over the United States. And after about 5.5 years, 6 years, we had seen most of what there was to see in the United States. And we loved it. Like our country's incredible. It's amazing. It's huge. And there's just vast diversity of people and culture and food and all this kind of stuff. But I'll never forget, there was one day we were, I think, somewhere in South Carolina, and we woke up and we were like, so where do you want to go today? And we kind of looked at the map around us, and Brittany was like, hey, do you remember that barbecue joint in St. Augustine, Florida with the good burnt ends? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, let's go there. And so we had started deciding where we were going to go based on where we wanted to eat. And it was kind of at that point where we were like, okay, there's got to be something more to this. We had lost the spark. Like, it was still cool, but we had lost the spark. You know what I mean? And so it was actually Brittany's idea to travel around the world, to drive around the world. And so when she brought up that idea, there was this new spark, right? It was like, okay, now there's something more out there for us to see, something more out there for us to do. And that kind of brings me full circle back to that idea of having nothing but the horizon in front of you. We have no idea what we're going to see tomorrow, right? There's no repetition, if you will.
It's
there's
all
no going to Mount
territory. Yeah.
Right. There's no going to Mount Rushmore for the 8th time, or Yellowstone National Park, which is gorgeous, for the 15th time. It's not like that. It's like, okay, we've never been to Lake Titicaca. I've never been to the Carretera Austral in Chile, but that's where we're headed. I've never been into the Andes in Argentina, but we're going there next, and that kind of thing. It's always brand new. So
we'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop. Now, back to the show. On the con side, I mean, what are some of the things that have been tough for you guys? I mean, obviously there's been incidents along the way, like the almost carjacking, and I guess it was Colombia and things like that. And we could talk about those stories, but really I'm just looking for the kind of on the lifestyle side of things. Cause I'm sure, having been nomadic myself, I know it can ebb and flow quite a bit. And especially in a relationship too, you're kind of always, like you were saying, we want to spend more time together, but there's no in between, right? Like you guys were working kind of separate lives when you were back living the quote unquote traditional life. And then you go on the road together and you're together all the time. There's no, and that can be hard too sometimes,
It can.
I'm speaking for myself, I think I would drive my wife insane if she saw me all the time.
No, and there's some truth to that. I mean, honestly, Brittany and I are best friends. And I don't say that, just for the sake of saying that, but she is like my confidant, my best friend, the person that I trust. And I know as a husband, you're supposed to say that and get the brownie points, but I really mean it, Jason. She is an incredible person and we get along incredibly well. And it's not to say that we don't have conflict or don't have disagreements and that type of thing. But I think the hardest thing for us in this is that it is life, but it's life more challenging, especially because we're driving around the world. We're not flying around the world. That in and of itself brings a whole slew of things that you have to deal with that are much more difficult because we still have to do life stuff, right? We're not going on a vacation and coming back. For example, in August of this last year, my mother passed away, right? What do you do when you're driving through Ecuador and your mother, all of a sudden you get a call from some family member that your mother's on her deathbed, right? I mean, there are legalities required to leave a vehicle, a foreign plated vehicle, inside a country if you're the person that the documentation is connected to. You've got to figure out a 27-hour flight. All of this stuff just happens, right? And so you've got to do that. You've got to go and handle this. And we've got to pay taxes, right? And we've got to vote. And all of these things are made logistically more challenging because of our choice. But the hardest part for me personally, and I'm not speaking for Brittany, but for me personally, the hardest part of this entire journey is not the bad actors. It's not the cartels. It's not the border crossings or any of that. It's the lack of consistency and community. And this is deep, Jason. This is really deep for a full-time traveler. Everyone we ever meet, we say goodbye to. Everyone. There is no friend of mine, like let's say you and I were buddies, we lived in the same town, and I'm like, Jason, I had a really rough day. You want to go get some wings and some pizza and some beer over at the pub? And you're like, yeah, man, let's go. I don't have that. That does not exist in my world. We don't have any physical, consistent community with us. And so because of that, there's this, and granted, it's self-imposed. Like, I'm not blaming anybody else. That's my choice by this lifestyle. But nevertheless, it's not there. And so there's this void where everybody has those friends that they can like, hey, man, the football game's on tonight. You want to come over to the house? Or we're having a backyard barbecue. Why don't you bring the wife and kids over? Like, that's just not a thing. And that's hard.
Yeah. I mean, it is the number one thing, I think, just one of the threads that I've noticed doing all these hundreds of interviews over the years is the thing that takes people off the road the most, I would say, or the thing that brings them from the nomadic lifestyle to something that's a little more with a base, home base somewhere. It's the community thing. It constantly comes up as the struggle. And I know I struggled with it myself traveling full time. It's real. Like it's not a reason not to go or whatever, but at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. We try to get past the rainbows and unicorns here on the show, and this is one of the realities of it. It can be challenging for sure. Just as humans, it's easy to sometimes like do the grass is always greener type of mentality, right? Like, oh, well, then if I had that, I could go to my same gym once a week and I'd have my friends I could have the wings with and stuff. And then like everything would be good. But, that lifestyle comes with other things too. So it's tough. Hashtag first world problems, right? Like you said, it's self-imposed. This is what you're choosing, but we're just having an honest conversation about it.
Right. And so, but there are ways to mitigate this, Jason, and I don't want to be very self-promotional. I really want to be here for your audience and to be able to answer their questions, but there are ways to mitigate this that we have learned. And so we personally have used one of those online platforms. I'm not even going to mention it by name, but an online platform where people kind of get behind us in this, and it has established a consistent community. It's a virtual community, but it's a consistent community of the same people that have been with us country after country, continent after continent, in which we can pour ourselves into them and really be transparent, right? And talk about the struggles and talk about the difficulties that we're facing or when times are hard or this type of thing. And they kind of get a behind the scenes inside look with us, but they're able to, for lack of a better term, minister to us, right? And so we've had some of these people who've been with us for a long time, and we've gotten to know them to the point when we've flown back to the United States to drive around, we've gone over to their house to have a barbecue. And so now we've converted that digital intimacy that we've developed into a physical relationship where we actually get to spend time with them and their family and get to know them. And it has been a tremendous, tremendous blessing to be able to have that consistent community through the digital space, which that was just mind-blowing to me when that realization came in that we don't have to be alone, right? Like we choose to have this life and to impose these difficulties on ourselves, but we can still have a community that we're consistent with. That has been a huge understanding, a huge revelation, I guess is a good thing.
That's great. Yeah, there are many ways to plug into digital communities. Again, it's not the same. You have the consistency digitally, but not necessarily in person, but it's something that people can find. Well, okay. So if somebody's listening and let's say they're embarking on like a full-time travel lifestyle, or maybe they're a couple years in and they're thinking about keeping it going, what is some of your best advice right now for balancing it all? Just going back to this, and actually we're going to get a ton of overlanding advice. We're going to do like an overland travel 101 little segment with you, but maybe not more than a little segment, because we want to get like all of the sort of FAQs on overland travel, which is something we haven't talked about for a while on the show. And I think, it's going to be one of those things, like I like to give people little tools to add into their travel tool belt. Like even if it's something they don't want to do now, maybe something they might want to consider in the future. But just on the topic of full-time travel, going back to the story you were sharing about that time in Mexico where you got the internet connection, and then you guys ended up, 5 years later, you're working so hard, you're not spending time together anymore, and then you lose your big client and everything. When you were sharing that, I was thinking about the entrepreneurial journey you were on at the same time, which, there are a lot of ways to go about full-time travel. You can find work on the way and stuff like that, but how most people are doing it now is by working remotely or working online. But, that can be hard to balance. Like you could say, okay, we got away from who we were, but at the same time, maybe you did. You needed to invest all that time to get good at your craft to the point where people were paying you a lot of money. And that required a lot of screen time, which required you guys to be apart. And that was just part of the journey. Like you can't necessarily take that out from, okay, well now we have the passive income and we can travel full time, but you needed to have all that time apart and all that screen time to get to the point where you were good enough to earn that income. And that's tricky because, yeah, some people get lucky, or some people, can pick things up quicker, or they have like the right kind of focus or whatever. I know it just generally speaking of the people I've talked to, it takes years to get to the point where you can actually sustain yourself with an online business. Generally speaking, you hear YouTube, like it's going to be 2 years of publishing videos like every week until you start earning any money, like things like that. Like you have to build a skill set. That's tough. And it's even tougher to do sometimes when you're traveling. So I guess, I'm just looking for advice here, kind of looking back, like if somebody's considering this, how do you kind of balance all that in a healthy way?
That's a great question, Jason. I think the problem stems with the root of the fact that people do not set goals. And what I mean by that is this. If you were building a house, Jason, and you needed, let's say the architectural plan said you needed 10,000 nails, okay? You would not go down to your hardware store and buy 250,000 nails. It's just, you wouldn't do it. That's not what you need. You need 10,000 nails, right? You would buy your 10,000 nails, and then you would build your house. But essentially, that's how we tend to live life. And that's what I was doing. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I'm saying that's what I was doing, right? You kind of going back to that story of we had all these clients, we were making all this good money, and I was chasing 250,000 nails without any concept of what I actually needed to start my full-time travel life and to essentially pursue the dream, because I hadn't identified the dream. So the dream is the house. The dream that you have is the house, and you need to count the cost. You need to figure out, what is that actually going to take? If my dream is to travel full-time around the world, how much does that cost, right? But it's not just a financial cost. It's a personal cost, right? It's leaving friends and family behind. It's also a logistical cost. It's how am I going to pay my taxes? How am I going to vote? What am I going to do about all of these things, right? So there's a personal cost, there's a logistical cost, and there's a financial cost related to full-time travel. And you have to be willing to pay that price, but you also have to know what that price is, especially from a financial standpoint. Because once you've identified that, you go out and you get your 10,000 nails and you build your house, you build your dream, right? That once you have that, start living your dream. But here's what happens. People get this mindset of like, I need more. I need more stuff. I need more equipment. I need more fill in the blank. And so they've got to earn more money. And that money takes time. The fact is, we're always trading our time for something. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't really think about, but it is so true. Right now, you are trading your time to invest in me, and I'm trading my time to invest in you. These seconds that are passing by, we never get them back, ever. They're gone forever. Time is not a renewable resource. Okay. You cannot generate it. You cannot make more of it. You cannot buy it. Right. And the craziest part is you don't know how much of it you have. So unlike money, where you can look at your bank account and say, this is how much I have, I can invest it, I can make more, I can invest it poorly and I can lose it. But I can look at my bank account and I can see a total tally and I can see what I've got. You can't do that with time. And yet every second that ever passes by is gone forever. It is unredeemable. You can never regain it. So the real question is, what are you doing with your time? And are you pursuing your dreams? And is everything that you're doing focused on getting to that place? The problem is you cannot pursue a dream that you haven't identified. And if you haven't identified the dream, you don't know how much it's going to cost. And if you don't know how much it's going to cost, you're always going to have that nagging feeling like you need more. Instead, if you say, for example, this is my dream, and it could be anything. I want to own a chateau in France that has, a beautiful vista. Okay, that's your dream. Fine. What is that going to cost personally, logistically, and financially? And once you've identified that, you can work diligently to get to that place where you've obtained that. But when you've obtained it, don't keep pursuing more. Go and buy your villa and live your dream, right? Like go and do what it is that you've identified for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. I like the way you broke it down, financial logistics and all that, because perhaps the dream doesn't cost as much as you think it does. Let's put it that way.
Well, and that's the point. That's the point, Jason.
Yeah.
When we realized that, look, I mean, what does it really take to drive around the world? And we can get into overlanding some, but ultimately we need fuel in the tank. We need food on the table. We need money for emergencies, and we need money for any entertainment that we want to be able to have and repairs and that type of thing. It's really not a lot. It's really not a lot, right? Now, if I had a mortgage, if I had other things back home that I had to pay for and deal with, then that adds that. But you make these intentional choices, this leap of faith to sell things so that you can be able to realize your dreams, and you realize you don't need as much as you thought you did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's another line too, is this, the process versus you mentioned like kind of having to sketch out and know where you're going and what it is that you want. But you don't want to also live in a way where I'm only going to be happy when I get there. And then you get there and you realize, okay, well, this is it. I mean, you hear this story all the time, right? And even, I take a personal example, like I get to podcast professionally and talk about travel. This was one of my dreams when I started out. Yet I still have stress and anxiety because it's like, well, what, am I going to keep getting sponsors as things go, like it doesn't just sort of, you don't just get there and then all of a sudden, yeah, like, so that's part of, you could say wanting more, and we know what that means. I think it's like, well, you don't need to push it so far, but at the same time, there's sort of a maintaining of the dream, and there's other anxieties and worries and things that can come up around that too, so it's tough. It's not always easy.
It is, but and dreams are, like you said, dreams are ever evolving, right? Like,
yeah, you're changing,
your dream can
change. Yeah.
Right. So the point is that you really have to decide, and this is something I've really given a lot of thought to. I think that what happens is a lot of times our dreams are extrinsic, meaning we expect to get something in return for the efforts that we've put forward. Okay. And I think those dreams don't last. I could be wrong, Jason. I'm not saying I'm a guru. This is my own personal reflection. But I believe that when your dreams are intrinsic, that this is when you can literally be fulfilled in life. And what I mean by that is this: extrinsic motives always have to do with getting something in return for what you're giving. Whereas intrinsic motives really have to do with you being fulfilled by the act of doing what you're doing. In other words, I have joy because I'm studying to be a doctor, right? Or I'm studying to be a doctor so that I can earn a good living and provide for my family. So both of those things are good. Neither one of those things are wrong, but one of them is motivated extrinsically. I'm doing this so that I can have this. And the other is motivated intrinsically. It literally fills me with joy to study medicine. That's what I enjoy. And that intrinsic motivation is what actually is going to fulfill you and keep you excited and focused on what you're doing. And I think that a lot of times when we identify our dreams, we don't really reflect on not what our dream is, but why is this our dream? Like, what is it about this that makes this what I want to do? When we focus on that, when we focus on the why, I think things become a lot more clear and we're a lot more fulfilled.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show. You know, when you guys decided, okay, you lost your client and that, going back to that, it's like, it was also like an opportunity to pause and take a breath and be like, wait a minute, like we're already in our dream. And I think that's important too, you know? I mean, like I was relating it back to my personal experience, but it's not every day where I'm worried about those things. A lot of times it's just like, look what I get to do. I get to get up and create podcasts and do these things. This is amazing. And just appreciate, like, kind of like just hitting pause and appreciating that. I think that's a good way to get off the hedonic treadmill if you're mentally on it, or if you're just like in a mental loop where you feel like you need more. And it's just like, you know, however you need to take a pause, whatever that means to you, if that's taking a day off and just, you know, going somewhere without your phone and just thinking or writing or whatever, it is important to kind of not forget where we're at, and that, you know, in many ways we're all living the dream right now, or at least parts of the dream, you know, right here in this very moment. We're alive. We're here. I mean,
right.
So anyway, didn't mean to go on a rant there, but just a lot to unpack around this overland travel advice, because we've talked about the cost. And I think that's one of the obviously big concerns around any style of travel that you're going to choose. And overland travel, I think on the surface seems to be exceptionally more expensive because of maybe the way the media portrays, like some of the vehicles you see are so big and intense and they cost like hundreds of thousands of, you know, some of these crazy vehicles you see with the big tires, and, you know, vehicles aren't cheap, and then repairing them. And we've all, like, everybody that's had a car knows that, you know, vehicles can be a pain. I've broke down many RVs and things like that. It's just like, it can be super expensive, and that's the biggest expense. So maybe you should just define first what overland travel means, like what makes it different than other forms of travel, what makes it different from just a road trip, because this is your world. Overland travel is a whole world with communities and conventions, and I just kind of want you to break it down for anybody hearing that for the first time, or not really, or just dipping their toes in that world.
Sure. So there's a lot of contention, believe it or not, right now in the overlanding community about the definition of overlanding. I think that a lot of times people feel that folks like who do what I'm doing are gatekeeping when we say, hey, if you go out for the weekend in your truck camper, you know, and there's a Walmart 20 miles from you, you're not overlanding. And then they're like, well, what do you mean I'm not overlanding? And they get all offended, this type of the other thing. So
I'm driving overland.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really like to get into all that contention. I mean, I can't really say what other people are doing or what they're not doing. A lot of people look at what I'm doing and say, you know, he's overlanding. Okay. And then you get some people who like defend me, and I'm not asking to be defended. Having said that, you know, the concept of overland travel, I think in general, it started out in Australia. That's where the first concept of this came, where they were just going across vast deserts. And it started out with droving cattle, right? The initial concept behind overlanding was you had these people, these herdsmen that were droving cattle across the vast stretches of Australia. And they were self-reliant, and they didn't have vehicles. They were just doing it by foot. They were doing it overland, right? And then with the concept and the inception of vehicles, they started realizing, hey, we could use these vehicles to make this trip better. And they had to be self-sustaining in the fact that they provided their own food and their own water and their own fuel and all that kind of stuff. And that evolved into modern day overlanding today, which is taking a vehicle and going, you know, to a place that you haven't been before, being able to get yourself out of situations and all that kind of stuff. And again, that all goes into definitions. But the bottom line is this: it's vehicle-based adventure travel. I think I've heard Scott Brady, the founder of Overland Journal, call it that. And so I don't have any problem with that definition. At the end of the day, it's more of a lifestyle choice, right? It's a choice that I want to go do something in a vehicle that is pretty spectacular and different. And for us, what that looks like is driving around the world, right? Which not a lot of overlanders do. Not a lot of overlanders travel for as long as we have or go to the places we have. But with all that said, you kind of started off by saying, a lot of people think it's really expensive and there's a lot of vehicles. I do a lot of public speaking at these huge expositions. Overland Expo West coming up in 2024 this year. We're going to be flying back, if all goes well, to Flagstaff, Arizona. We're going to be speaking at Overland Expo West. And this event usually has 40,000 people at it, right, that are really hyper interested in overland travel. There's 500 vendors, all of these stages, all of these extremely experienced overland travelers that teach classes and do that type of thing. And Brittany, Caspian, and I will be teaching there this year. And I've spoken at, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 Overland Expo events. So it's kind of a regular thing where they invite us out because of the experience that we have.
Yeah. That's why you're here on the show.
One of the first things that I tell people is this: listen, in order to drive around the world, in order to travel around the world, you need 5 things, and just 5 things: water, food, shelter, warmth, and sleep. And that's it. Everything else is nice to have. And yes, we have a pretty epic vehicle, but I don't own a house. Right. So in other words, where you might say, well, I've got a $250,000 house, but I don't have your overland vehicle and I really couldn't afford it. Well, my overland vehicle costs half of your house and I don't have a house. So the reality is that's all perception, right? I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, my vehicle is a $125,000 vehicle, but I don't own a house. So that is my house. And so that kind of puts things into that perspective. Now, if you want it all, you want the boat, the jet skis, the yacht, the overland vehicle, the house, the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence and the golden retriever, then that's on you. But at the end of the day, that's not what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for, this is my dream. This is my 10,000 nails. This is what I am pursuing. And so when I get on stage, I tell people all the time, don't think that you need a lot. And the reality, Jason, is as I'm driving through, we've driven through all of Mexico, every country in Central America. We're now down into South America. I see other overlanders from all over the world, from Portugal, from Brazil, from France, from Germany, from all over the world. And some of them are in minivans. Okay, like not a 4-wheel drive vehicle, not a big expedition vehicle. They've got a sleeping bag in their minivan, a pillow, and they have water, food, shelter, warmth, and sleep. And they're doing things that people back home in the States with $250,000 overlanding vehicles aren't doing, right? Like they're going to Machu Picchu tomorrow, and they drove here in a minivan. So it's not about the vehicle or the equipment or that. It's really about what is it you want to do. What sacrifices are you willing to make to achieve the dream that you've set before you? And what standard of living do you set for yourself? And I think that is really a big limiting factor for people.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Because the media perception is not the actual reality. Like you said, you're meeting people doing this in minivans and everything. And it's easy to kind of look at the gear. This is with any sport, right? Like sometimes you're sold so much all the time that you think you need all this fancy gear and this, that, and the other to make it happen. But that is certainly not the case. So I really appreciate that.
Well, and the funny part of this, Jason, is we'll be off on some epic off-road trail, like, and we're in a Jeep Gladiator, and the thing is cool. It's just a cool vehicle. Right. And so I've got it in 4 high and we're going up this rocky terrain or something like that. And then some 82-year-old man will pass us in a broken down 1989 Nissan truck that's all rusted. And this is his daily commute. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's really, it's really humbling, and it puts that into perspective. Especially when you're feeling kind of like, like you're a one bad dude, like, crawling up this road in the Andes, and then like this guy just goes right past you in his Nissan that's all rusted. It's pretty humbling.
I don't know how they get around some of those potholes in the 82 Nissan, but
they do it. Like, you would be surprised at what we see down here.
Yeah. I watched some of the video where you guys went down this pretty harrowing road in Colombia. and it was so tight and stressful. And I saw some of the cars coming the other way, and that was the mental picture I got from that video. But that was cool. Like if you want to kind of get a feel for what it's like, you check out the YouTube station. I'm talking to the listeners here because you can kind of get a sense of some of the on the ground adventure stuff. Okay, so since you've done all this speaking, you've heard I have my own list of questions, but you have been on the ground answering these questions in person from people. What are sort of the common myths, questions, perceptions? Like, give us the 101 on overland travel, some of the things that people ask you and how you respond. And I guess just what, outside of the core 5 you just shared, which I think is great. I noticed money was not in that list. I don't think.
No, I mean, you have to have some measure of finances to be able to have water, food, shelter, warmth, and sleep. But ultimately, they're so those are the basics of survival, right? I mean, you need to have those things to survive. And so, you need to have money to put fuel in the tank and food on the table. But we have seen people down here in Latin America that are overlanding for extended periods. They're doing it on a budget of $500 a month. And we've seen other people doing it on a budget of $5,000 a month, right? And so there's everything in between, but both of them are doing it, and don't miss that, right? So and that's why I go back to standard of living, right? At the end of the day, you as an individual decide what your standard of living is and what's acceptable to you. But make no mistake, the guy who was doing the $5,000 a month overlanding and the guy who was doing $500 a month overlanding were in the same campground.
Yeah.
Now,
right. Okay.
They might have been eating somewhere differently that night. The $500 a month guy might have been cooking his own food, and the $5,000 might have been at a really nice restaurant that night, taking a cab to go out there. But they're both in the same place, in their vehicles, enjoying the same surroundings. And so that's just kind of something to keep in mind. It's really personal, right? I mean, there's going to be a minimum. There's really no maximum as far as expenditures goes.
Okay. Yeah. Outside of the core 5 you share, I mean, what are some of the must-haves that you would say that would fit either of those budgets? And maybe these are small things that, like, these small investments that make your life extraordinarily better.
Oh, man. So that's a really good question. Something that doesn't get talked about that often. Your litmus test for equipment when it comes to overlanding is frequency of use. That's the litmus test of where you're going to spend those hard-earned dollars that you've been saving up for in overland travel. Meaning, people will go out and buy a really expensive winch, right, to put on the front of their vehicle, $2,000 winch to put on the front of their vehicle. But they won't spend more than $20 on a camping chair because they can get a camping chair at Walmart for $20. That's a mistake. That's a mistake, because the camping chair you're going to use 3 times a day, every single day. Whereas the winch, you may use it once a year, and usually to help somebody else out, not even to pull yourself out of anything. And so, if you're going to use a piece of equipment 3 times a day, every single day on your journey, that's the piece of equipment that you invest in. Get a really high quality widget, whatever that thing is, right? For Brittany, it might be her coffee maker. Right, like that's an essential piece of kit, Jason. Like because if Brittany doesn't get her coffee, then she's not happy, and Mom's not happy, nobody's happy, right? Like she has to have her coffee, and so
I hear
go ahead and
Brittany
invest
on
in
that. I hear Brittany on that. I'm the
same way, right? But people have chided me in the past, and other overlanders have chided me saying, "Eric, your camping chairs are $300 each." And I said, yeah, but if
you're
you
like, sit down, buddy, try this
exactly,
out.
Right? So I've had these camping chairs. Right, for 6 years, and I've used them 3 times a day, every single day. So now do the math, right? Take that $300 and divide it by 3, and then divide it by 6 years, by 365 times 3, and tell me how much I paid for those chairs. They're still in great shape. They don't fall apart. I use them every day, and life is good, right? And so what happens is Brittany and I have come to this idea, which is whenever we're buying a piece of kit, whatever that piece of kit may be, the litmus test is frequency of use. And the question is, how much would we pay to rent this kit for a day, right? And then how many times would we need to rent this kit to have it pay for itself? And I know that seems really weird to even think on this, but it's really not, because when you live in a vehicle, this is another thing about overland travel, space and weight is at a premium, right? It's like living on a boat. Space and weight is at a premium. Everything has to go somewhere. It has to live somewhere in your vehicle, and you have to have a place to store it. And every pound that it adds to your payload capacity, which then decreases your range because of fuel and all of that kind of stuff. And it makes it more difficult to live. So like right now, I wish I had Starlink. I don't have Starlink, Jason. Can you believe that? I'm an overlander driving around the world and I don't have Starlink, and I'm a YouTuber. So I can't even upload my videos sometimes. This has been a bone of contention between Brittany and I. I keep telling her I want Starlink, and she's like, "Where's it going to go? Where's it going to go? What are you going to remove from our vehicle?" She's not opposed to it. She's like, "Where's it going to go? Where's it going to live? What are we going to have to move out of the way every time we want to drag it out? How often are we going to use it? Like all of these things, how much does it weigh? What is the footprint that it takes?" Like all of these things come into mind. And so we don't have it. Like, we still don't have it. And there may come a day when we do have it, but right now we don't.
Yeah. I mean, all of that you just laid out, like that methodology that Brittany was sharing about getting Starlink, having full-time traveled, I've gone through that same thought process like you guys do with everything you bring in. And that's one of the things that really did carry over in regular life. I feel like I got very analytical with like what I decided to bring into my life in a good way. Like, I think that's minimalism in a good way, right? It's like, all right, where's this going to go? Is it worth it? How much am I going to use it? All those questions, that's like one of those lessons from full-time travel that really carried over. I feel it's a good thing, right? For everybody.
Yeah. And the investment, don't miss that part on the investment when I say invest in the things that you use frequently. So like, for example, hiking boots. Brittany's hiking boots are $250, $300 boots, right? But she only has 3 pairs of shoes. She has, just like I do, I have a pair of flip-flops or Crocs. I wear Crocs. So I have a pair of Crocs. I have a pair of low quarter shoes and a pair of hiking boots. That's it. I have 3 pairs of shoes. And so does Brittany. And so if I'm only going to have 3 pairs of shoes, then each one of them has to have a specific purpose. And I don't mind paying for them and paying good money for them to have good quality equipment that's going to be durable, that's going to last me, that's going to, serve that purpose. But, we're not like those people who open the door and have 22 pairs of shoes to choose from. That's just not a thing in our life because we live in a Jeep.
Okay. Well, what about the logistics of, all of it, sleeping, gas or diesel, insurance, crossing borders, all that kind of stuff that I feel like that's like once people get past I'm going to drive, from here to Timbuktu or whatever. And then they're like, well, wait a minute. What about all these questions? I imagine that's why there's a lot of these communities and everything to help answer these questions. But what's your best advice for, a lot of this, sometimes you just have to tackle it as you go. Like you can't have all the answers, but for somebody that's ramping up for an overland excursion, what would be your best advice for all of that stuff?
That's a really hard question to answer, Jason, honestly. And I'm not evading the question. The thing is, it's so broad. Like you said, there's just so many things to talk about. But I think the overarching thing is this: don't believe the media hype. That's the first thing. Okay. Everybody will tell you, what are you, crazy? You're going to take your 2-year-old into Mexico? Are you insane? Do you know what happens down there in Mexico? And Mexico is a beautiful country filled with kind and hospitable people who will go out of their way to bless you and serve you and help you at every turn. And are there bad actors in Mexico? Yes, 100%. Are there bad actors in the United States? Yes, 100%, right? Like, I think sometimes we allow the media to feed us this information that we buy off of because we don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have any experience, right? But here's the difference in this. And I want to talk about the media and how it portrays this type of travel, whether it's flying in or, to a country that you're not too familiar with, or driving. the same principle applies. If Brittany and I were in Mexico or any country in Latin America and something tragic happened to us, right? We got kidnapped, something crazy happened to us, we would be all over the U.S. media, all over the U.S. media. 3 Americans in Colombia just got carjacked, their Jeep got stolen, and now, the authorities are doing this, and we would be on every news station and everybody would know who we were. The flip side of that is Brittany and I could travel around the world, literally drive on every habitable continent over the next 15 years, have an incredible time, meet amazing people, have incredible experiences, do insane things, and nobody would ever hear about it unless they happen to hear this podcast or happen upon our YouTube channel. Then they would hear the story, but we wouldn't be, famous, if you will. And that's not our goal. Our goal is not to be famous, but I want you to understand that concept that the media sensationalizes negative things. And so what happens is if something bad happens in Mexico, the media doesn't portray the bad actor who did the negative thing and say this individual did it. It's like Mexico's dangerous. Don't go to Mexico. You're crazy if you go to Mexico. Like, that's insane. And that's what the people buy into. Meanwhile, we can have a shooting in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado, which is a really nice area of Colorado, at a grocery store where 17 people get killed and nobody says don't go to Colorado. Nobody says don't go grocery shopping in Boulder. That's just not a thing. Instead, that individual becomes the bad actor, the guy who did it, or the guns become the issue, right? Either one. And we don't need to get into politics. But the bottom line is, the American media will point towards a bad actor when it happens in our country, but when it happens in a foreign country, they will kind of generalize that whole country, and that's false. I'm telling you right now, that's false. We've been traveling internationally, overlanding since 2018, 19, and we've had one negative incident. One, Jason. Okay? And other than that, 100% of the time, people have rolled out the red carpet for us. I'll give you an example. We were in Colombia. We rolled into this restaurant. It had like these walls around it. It was a steakhouse. We decided to eat at the restaurant. The owner came over. Of course, he saw our Jeep. He was like, wow, I love your vehicle. Where are you from? We're like, we're from the U.S. And I was tired, and he could tell. And I asked him, I said, sir, would you mind, do you think we can pop our tent here in your parking lot tonight and just camp? I'm happy to pay you for that service. He's like, no, you're not going to pay me. You're my guest. You're welcome to stay here. And this is his business. This is his restaurant. This is his business, right? So this is what the man does. He calls me over after he closes up the restaurant. He unlocks the door with his key. He walks me into his business and says, there's a bathroom here. There's a shower here. You guys are welcome to use them both. I'm going home. I'm going to come back and I'll see you guys in the morning. Okay? And he leaves. Now, he just met us that day. He has no reason to trust me. He has no reason to know me. And he's Colombian and I'm American, and he's rolling out the red carpet. I want you to picture this same man doing what I'm doing in our country. He rolls up to a restaurant. He's got a little camper. And as a Colombian man, he walks into an American-owned business and says, hey, I was wondering, would you let me camp in your parking lot tonight because I'm really tired? Okay? I'm not saying that there's nobody in the United States that would say yes to him, but I'm going to guess that there are very few. And on top of that, I'm going to say that even fewer would unlock the door to their business, walk them into their business, and then leave, right? But this kind of thing happens all the time in Latin America, like all the time. People invite us into their homes. People invite us into their properties, onto their farms, into their businesses. And they just are so gracious and so hospitable, but you never hear that in the news media. It's just not a thing. So that's the first thing, is don't believe the hype. Don't believe what everybody's telling you about how horrible and dangerous. These places are beautiful, incredible, amazing. The people are kind, giving, hospitable. Come and experience it for yourself. The second thing is, if you really have questions about overlanding, talk to us, meaning talk to Brittany and I, reach out to us, or reach out to some other people who are in the regions that you want to go and ask them questions. We're happy to help. Pretty much every overlander that I've ever met is more than happy to share their wisdom and experience and ideas and thoughts with another overlander. But it's going to be case by case, right? It's going to be like, I can't tell you that everything from Mexico to Belize to Colombia to, Nicaragua and Honduras and Costa Rica are all the same. They're all different. They're all different, right? So everything's going to be different. And it's too hard to really tackle that question as a generalist question. But I will say this, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody, right? Brittany and I are an open book. Like, you could reach out to us about anything. We will tell you exactly what it's like. We'll be very transparent, but we'll also be honest, and it won't be media hype. It'll be from firsthand personal experience. And I have run into that with other overlanders, which they're the same way. So if overlanding is something you're interested in, you're listening to this podcast, reach out to somebody has overlanded in the area that you've been in, and try and find somebody who's done it recently. Meaning, like right now, Brittany and I are probably not your best source for Mexico. I mean, I could give you a lot of information about Mexico, but it's not current, right? And there are plenty of overlanders in Mexico right now who are actively there that you could reach out to and get some more real-time information on the current state of events in that country and what's happening. And I think there's wisdom in that as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's amazing points there. So destination-wise, speaking of destinations, this is a travel podcast. For listeners, I mean, you guys have driven through a lot of countries now and had this experience. And I think how I want to frame this is, listen, not everybody, or I should say most people listening, might not get into overlanding in the way you're describing it. But if you go back to the original definition, like vehicle-based adventure travel, you could say probably most people listening are going to do that at some point, whether it's renting a car or driving their own car, like an extended road trip and all that type of stuff. So just taking the sort of the full-time kind of like overlanding, I'm traveling vehicle-based all the time out of the equation, and just saying vehicle-based adventure travel, whether that means somebody flies in and rents a car and gets to explore a country for a few weeks, let's say, as a hypothetical. What are some of the places that you would recommend that they go, or maybe areas in places where, like, this was a really enjoyable place to travel and experience this place by vehicle? So, you can even have your own tent in a trunk. Like, it doesn't have to be a vehicle you sleep in, but this is a place I would recommend you go and spend 3 weeks road tripping around. And it's not stressful driving, or maybe it's manageable, just kind of factoring that in. Where would you recommend people go? Give us your top 3.
Sure. Well, let me get to the top 3, Jason, but I do want to share something, because as you were asking this question, some things were coming to mind. For anybody who's interested in overlanding travel, and like maybe they just want to dip their toes in, right? Like, I don't want to go full time. I don't want to do this. I want to do some vehicle-based adventure travel, right? Where's a good place to cut my teeth? Really, Baja California is a fantastic place. There are very little requirements regarding taking a vehicle into the country. The whole peninsula of Baja California, both north and south, are considered a tourist zone by the Mexican government. So the paperwork requirements to get into Baja are not the same as getting into interior Mexico. So it's a really easy place to cut your teeth. Also, there's only one major road that goes down the entire length of the peninsula that splits off at one point in time into two and then rejoins itself. So you're going to see other travelers who are doing the same thing. You can get really cheap food because it's so touristy. Even the locals speak a lot of English. You're going to run into the same people all over the time. You're going to get to do some beach camping. And you'll get to dip your toes in with a different currency and a different language, but you're not going to feel like completely isolated. Like, there's a marked difference between Baja and interior Mexico. Okay. So for anybody who wants to do some vehicle-based adventure travel, I would consider starting in Baja and just checking it out and seeing if it's your thing. Like, do I like this? Is it cool? Is it not cool? Is it not for me? Whatever. It will help to inform your decision. You'll get to see some colonial towns, do some off-roading. It's a cool place to go. Now, having said that, interior Mexico, do you know, and I tell people this all the time, it is shorter to go from the border, like Corpus Christi, Texas, or El Paso, Texas, to go into La Huasteca Potosina in interior Mexico than it is to drive across the state of Texas. Like, put that in perspective. Like, people don't think twice about driving, from El Paso to Beaumont, or, driving across the state of Texas is just part of their road trip to get to Florida for, Disney World or whatever. but it's actually shorter to go from Texas to La Huasteca Potosina and back than it is to cross the state of Texas. And by going to La Huasteca Potosina, you are transported into a different, almost mythological world of waterfalls and turquoise waters and lagoons and tropical paradise and lush jungle and really cheap food and amazing tacos and incredible margaritas and all of those things that come along with Mexico. And it's so much closer. I mean, it's literally like you could get down there in a day and a half, and nobody does it. And it's not hard. It's not hard. Like, just dip your toes in interior Mexico. If maybe you've done the Baja thing and you're like, hey, that's really cool. I want to take the next step, right? Like, what is the next step in adventure travel? Man, go down to San Luis Potosi, which is the capital city of the state of San Luis Potosi, and go experience that history and that culture there, and then drive out to La Huasteca Potosina, and then make a U-turn and go back to the United States. And I think that I'm telling you, I think, Jason, that if people did that, I think it would really open their eyes to the possibilities that they hadn't considered before, to the truth about the people of Mexico and their friendliness and hospitality, the affordability of being able to travel into Mexico, and especially, when your income is on the dollar. I don't know if your listeners realize this, but the median wage of a skilled worker in Mexico is $15 a day, not an hour, a day. Okay. So when you're working at McDonald's and you're making $15 an hour, right? In 1 8-hour day, you are making the same as they make in a week. So they have to live off that income in Mexico. So I don't want you to think that you have to be like extremely wealthy to drive into Mexico, and you don't need an overland vehicle. Like I said, you can do it in a minivan. You do it in the vehicle that you have. And that's one of the things Brittany and I stress when we speak at events is start with what you got. Just start with what you have. Throw a sleeping bag in there, a tent, like you said, a ground tent, sleeping bag, food, water, food, shelter, warmth, and sleep. Get that locked into your vehicle and go. Cross the border, go down there, experience it, live cheaply, enjoy it. And then come back and reflect on what you just did and how much it cost you. And then the world kind of opens up to you. You start to realize, hey, there's a lot more to this than what I've been realizing. And I think most people, if they did that, maybe they don't become full-time travelers. And I don't expect that most people would, right? But it broadens their horizons, and it opens doors. It like pulls back this curtain of possibilities and says, okay, well, next time, you know what? I'm not going to drive in there, but it was so epic. I'm going to fly down there and get an Airbnb. But I'm not even going to get an Airbnb because I met 4 locals who have places to rent, and I'm going to rent it at their price. Right. And so I'm just going to go down there, and for, $1,000, I'm going to live like a king for the next month and a half. We were laughing. Okay. I got to tell you this. So last night, Brittany and I, we went out to these ruins here. We're in Cusco, which is the cradle of the Incan civilization. And up on the hill of Cusco is this ruins. I can never pronounce the name of the place. It's Sacsayhuaman or something. Sacsayhuaman never mind. Anyway, these amazing ruins. We go up there, we leave, we go back down to have dinner. And we go to this nicer area of town, and there's this steakhouse, right? We didn't even know what it was, so we just looked it up on Google, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's got like really, really good reviews. We go in there to eat, and it's like this white tablecloth, full dining service, 5-star experience. I'm wearing a ball cap and a T-shirt and hiking boots, and Caspian's got like a T-shirt and some random necklace around his neck, and we do not look like we belong in this restaurant because it's all like really high-end, people there. And we're looking at the menu. We ordered 2 full meals, 3 drinks, an appetizer, a handmade appetizer at the table. And all out with our tip and everything included, it was $63. Now, to put this in perspective, I think I took my family to Red Robin the last time we went to the United States, and it was $75 for our meal. You know what I mean? For the 3 of us. So, and this is probably like the highest end restaurant in Cusco. And so I just want people to realize that like there's so much to explore in this world. And as far as getting back to your question, top three places, definitely La Huasteca Potosina, because it's so close. Like I said, tropical paradise, maybe 700 miles down from the southern border of the United States, because it's something that you will realize, wow, I had no idea this was on my doorstep. Like it's your backyard. It's literally the United States' backyard.
How about a place in South America?
Okay, yeah. So a lot of people don't realize how amazing Cartagena, Colombia is. Cartagena, Colombia is filled with history. And I mean, there are fortresses and ruins and old city and nightlife and just walkable neighborhoods with cobblestone streets and decorated alleyways and lights and live music just happening all around you at all times. The historic area of Cartagena, Colombia is really spectacular and something to be seen. And there's a neighborhood just south of the historic center of Cartagena. Man, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's like a biblical name. It's like, it's not Bethlehem. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, if you look at the historical center of Cartagena, just south of it, there's a neighborhood. And that neighborhood is a fantastic neighborhood to stay in because you can walk into Cartagena and see all the historic stuff, but stay in in this place. So that would be one there. And the other is the Galapagos. Like the Galapagos Islands of Ecuador, that, in my opinion, has probably been the highlight of the entire trip. And I didn't even drive there. I mean, I drove to Ecuador. I drove to Ecuador, but you have to catch a flight to the islands, right? So it felt like a vacation for us because we actually got to park the Jeep, get on a plane, and stay in a hotel. So, but we spent 10 days in the Galapagos, and it was it was beyond what I expected. Like just the wildlife that's around you, the white sand beaches, the snorkeling, and for those that scuba dive, the scuba diving, the food. It was just, you're walking around and there's like marine iguanas walking next to you, which the only place in the world that you can find them is in the Galapagos. It's the only place they exist. And so you go snorkeling and they just dive in the water with you. Brittany got attacked by a sea lion. It's in our Galapagos video. You get to see this like sea lion, like stalking her in the water. And of course, me being the great husband, instead of trying to rescue my wife, I whipped out my phone and started videotaping. It's just an incredible place to visit. So that would be it. I would say, for the adventurous type that want to drive and try something new, La Huasteca Potosina, south of the United States. For somewhere in South America, definitely Cartagena, Colombia, from an historical perspective. That's a great fly-in destination and walk around on foot type of place. And then for the mind-blowing tropical experience, the Galapagos Islands, that was unreal. Unreal for me.
And Baja for cutting your teeth, you mentioned. And you were starting to say to me, interrupt, but you mentioned Caspian. If he had his druthers, where would he be? Oh yeah,
traveling. Yeah, so there's no question. Every year we ask Caspian, what's your favorite place you've been? What's the favorite thing you've done? And his answer has never changed, not once. It's always been no. And we have a video on this place too. It's the cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. So for those not familiar, the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico is famous by Cancun and spring break and all that kind of stuff. But the reality of the Yucatan Peninsula is that it's the home of the Mayan ruins of Chichen Itza and all of these other areas that were established by the Mayans. And within there are these areas called cenotes, which are essentially underground caves that usually have some sort of dome. Some of them have an opening to the sky, some of them don't, but inside are these crystal blue waters and these vines that hang down and these rocky outcroppings. And if you go to some of the more rustic ones, it's really cool because you get taken out like on this horse-drawn cart that's on a rail system, and it'll go out like 7 miles into the jungle on this horse-drawn cart. And then you get off and you walk into the jungle and down these ladder wells into this tropical paradise of a cenote, and you get to swim around and all this kind of stuff. And Caspian was mesmerized by it, and he still talks about it to this day. He talks about it almost once a week. And last thing, it was funny because we asked him, he was about to turn 7, and we were like, Caspian, so what do you want for your birthday? He goes, will you take me back to the cenotes of Mexico? And so every time anybody asks him, that's like his memory. But yeah, it's an epic place to visit.
Have you guys been tempted at all in some of these places, or has there been any place that you've been where you looked at each other and you're like, maybe we should settle down here for a little while, like, get out of the car, maybe spend 6-12 months here, maybe more, maybe just move here. I don't know. You got one?
There is one and only one. And gosh, we've been traveling like over a decade, and we have always thought, like, what does this look like? What is the end game? Where does this end? So let's say we drive around the world and we're done. What do we do now? And the only place that both Brittany and I have ever been, and we've been to a lot of places, that we have been able to say we could buy a forever home here. We could buy a home here and stay, is Guanajuato, Mexico. And this isn't a place that's a major tourist destination. Everybody goes to San Miguel de Allende, which is outside of Guanajuato. But Guanajuato, Mexico, so Guanajuato is the state. And within the state, Guanajuato, the city, is the capital of the state. Kind of like, we say New York, even though New York's not the capital of New York, but the principle is the same, right? It's the same name place. But Guanajuato City is a very historical city. It's where the first battle for Mexican independence took place. So there's a lot of historical buildings there. But essentially, it's a city that looks like a salad bowl, where the bottom of the city is the historic center. That would be the bottom of the salad bowl. And then the city rises up around it in just this colorful palette of homes that are different painted colors. So it's that quintessential picturesque Mexican city that you can think of. And it's a very cosmopolitan city. There's a lot of different food options and different cultures, and there's music. The city is alive. Like, it's just alive, and it's incredible. There's underground tunnels, and you can totally get lost. There's so many alleyways and plazas in Guanajuato that you could literally just get lost for weeks and weeks just walking around that town. It's incredibly affordable. There's always a festival. Those people party like there's no tomorrow. Like, we have several videos on Guanajuato on our channel, and you guys can see that. But yeah, that is the only place that Brittany and I have ever been that we've both said we could live here. This could be it.
Well, it'll be interesting to catch up some years down the road or stay in touch and see, if that place has changed. If it's bumped off the top spot. I mean, these destination recommendations are great. Thank you. And I love the way you describe these places. And also it means a lot because you have been to a lot of places. So when somebody's been so well-traveled to share a handful of places like that, people should check out. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate your time, Eric. And I appreciate the fact that you're the only person ever on this podcast to compare a Red Robin meal and a Peruvian steakhouse meal all in the same. That's cool. You mentioned several times people can get in touch, and you're generous. You guys are so generous like that, sharing your knowledge. Do you want to just share with everybody one more time? Of course, we'll link to all this, but where everybody can get in touch and find your work and the videos and all the good stuff?
Sure. So the brief snapshot of us is we're Eric, Brittany, and Caspian Highland. Our son is 7 years old. We're an American family of 3. We've been traveling full-time for 10 years, and we're trying to drive around the world on all 6 habitable continents, and we're sharing that journey. And so we share it under the name Hourless Life, and you can find us on YouTube, and you can find us on Instagram, and we do have a Patreon. If you want to go behind the scenes with us, that's really where we get raw and transparent, but we don't gatekeep anything in that everything that we release is released publicly. and that we're open to anyone who asks us questions. We actually didn't start our Patreon for financial reasons. We started it for relational reasons. And it's been a huge blessing to our family and to have that consistent community, which we talked about. So yeah, Hourless Life on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, all the things, that's where we're at. And I do want to stress that we are happy to be a resource for anyone who's considering full-time travel in general, travel to areas that we've been, overland travel. And something that we didn't really talk about, Jason, traveling as a family, educating a child, parenting philosophies when it comes to traveling as a family full-time. We've raised Caspian on the road. Like he literally went from the birthing room to the Jeep. He's never known a life apart from this. So we are his educators full-time. I wish we had talked more about Caspian on this call because he is such an incredible kid. The snapshot on Caspian, he's read over 2,000 books. He's doing, from a school perspective, he's already delving into fractions, percentages, and algebra. He spent the night in every one of the lower 48 states, at least one night. He's been to 37 of the 63 national parks. He's fluent in Spanish. He's been to 14 different countries, driving through them. He's an incredible kid. And we've just gotten to invest so much time in him. And, the questions that we get asked the most are, number one, how do you afford to do what you do? That's the number one question that we get. We have a video on our YouTube channel called The Long Game, which really tells our story. And it's a long video, but for those really interested, it tells that story. The number two question we get is, what about Caspian? Like some people are like, you're doing him a disservice. He's missing out on all the stuff that kids should grow up with, the T-ball and the orange slices and the going to McDonald's after the T-ball game and, the socialization in a grade school, or kindergarten, grade school, and those friendships and that type of thing. And what about, his learning? Like, you're not taking him to school, so he's not getting all the core subjects. And what does that look like? And why are you guys doing that to him? That's not fair to him. He didn't decide to do this. You guys made that decision for him. And believe it or not, Jason, we've got a lot of flack on that. You know what I mean? But you meet Caspian, your entire perspective changes immediately. Like, this kid is just so well socialized, so well cultured. He's now conversationally fluent in Spanish. He hangs out with he's like the world's greeting community. He loves everybody. He wants to be a robotics engineer. He's like studying things at 7, and he just turned 7 at 7 years old that most people don't really study until middle school. His English vocabulary is at the level of university right now. And he is just an incredible, incredible kid. He could be your guest on your podcast. Seriously, you could interview Caspian and he could have an intelligent conversation with you regarding his journey and what this has happened. And I'll tell you what, it is a phenomenal thing to be a witness of. Anyway, that's my plug for my son. He's an incredible traveler.
That's amazing. Yeah. Is it hard to, because you guys put yourselves out there, like you said, and you mentioned people coming up to you and expressing their sentiments or they disagree with your choices or whatever. How do you respond to that? And what kind of advice you give to anybody else listening that's going to maybe be in that situation with their own travels or choices where you might face some criticism or people like that that are coming?
Well, I'm sure you know this all too well, Jason. There are so many trolls and haters on the internet, regardless of what you choose to do. Like, you could have the most successful travel podcast on the planet, and you're probably going to get all kinds of folks that are going to, criticize what you're doing or say what you're doing. Here's the thing. What we've done is we get a lot of questions, and I think some are very well-meaning. Like, they really want to know, like, how are you socializing your son? Like, how is he getting the core subjects of math, science, history, English, et cetera? And to those people, we love to respond. Like, we will invest in you and respond to you and give you those answers. And then you get the trolls, right? Like, just, you're ruining your kid's life. I can't believe you're taking him into Mexico. What, are you insane? He's going to get kidnapped. And then you're going to regret this. And you're going to remember I said that. And I was like, oh, dude, chill out. Calm down. Like, we have intentionally decided to do this. My advice is this: be true to yourself, right? At the end of the day, if you're talking about your children, my hope is that every parent would want to invest as much as possible in their children as they can. I cannot conceive of investing more than Brittany and I do. We're with Caspian 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. every single day. And we are his educators. We are the one taking the time to do that. And nobody reflects on and thinks more on his upbringing and his goodness, right? Like how he's maturing as a young boy and his future. Nobody reflects on that more than Brittany and I do. And if we ever see anything that we think is going to negatively impact our son as a result of our journey, our son takes priority. There's no question. That's not a thing, right? And so if someday down the road, Caspian was like, hey, Daddy, I want to go to public school because like all my friends that I talk to online, they're all going to high school. Then we're going to be transparent with him about what public school is like and not try and edge him one way or the other, but just explain to him, okay, this is what you're asking to do. Are you sure this is what you want to do? And if he makes that decision, we're going to honor that. Like he's our priority. Like, we can always continue the drive later, but at the end of the day, what we've done is all of these questions that we get repeatedly. How do you afford to do this? What are you doing about your son? How are you homeschooling him? We have answered all of these in articles. And that's something I didn't mention, Jason. We have a website, hourlesslife.com. And there are tons and tons of resources. We actually have a master map of our travels with key points of interest. It's almost like an Atlas Obscura where you can log into the map and it's free, and log into the map and click on it and see what we have to say on the areas, or maybe if there's a blog article attached to that. And Brittany's a phenomenal writer. Brittany writes all the articles on our website, and she writes for Overland Journal, which is like the premier magazine in the world for overlanding. She's one of their writers. So she's a very gifted writer, and she's taken the time to talk about like our parenting philosophy and our thoughts on finances and answering questions from everything from homeschooling to the type of gear and equipment that we use and why we chose it and our philosophy of purchasing equipment. All of that stuff's on our website at hourlesslife.com.
Well, two last things. Since you brought up the socialization piece for your son, I was just wondering, what is your number one advice there? What is your philosophy, or what do you guys do?
Okay, well, again, each child is going to be different, right? And so you're going to have some introverted childs. You're going to have some introverted children and extroverted children. Caspian is definitely an extrovert. He is not shy to go up to other people and meet them, whether or not he speaks their language. He just wants to be friends with everybody, and he's really good at that. My advice is this. We live in an age of technology, and technology is your friend, right? And so I think that a lot of people take it for granted back home, even within the United States, where they'll pick up their phone and they'll video call each other, right? They'll FaceTime each other or do something of that nature. And they feel close to one another, and they could even be in the same city doing that. And they don't see that as wrong, even though they're in the same city. Caspian does this all the time. He does this with his grandparents. He does this with his siblings. He does this with his friends back home, where he'll hop on a video call with them and just have that same conversation. The only difference is he's doing it from Peru instead of from across town, right? Like he's still having that interaction, and then being intentional about when you do make trips back home for us being the United States. When you do make trips back home, being intentional about bringing him physically to be in person with those that he cares about, right? Like his friends and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Any final words of wisdom here you want to leave everybody with? I like what you said before of just like start with what you got.
Overarching thoughts, Jason, is this. And I think that if I had to really drill it down to what I would like to share with your audience is this, and this is applicable to your entire audience, regardless of where they're at. And that is that time is the most important asset that you have. And do not kid yourself about anything else, because apart from time, you have nothing. And you're always trading your time for something. If you're sleeping, you're trading it for rest. If you're eating, you're trading it for sustenance. If you're working, you're trading it for income. But you're trading your time for something, and you never get time back. So consider that time is the asset that you and I have in equal measure, that Jason has in equal measure. We each wake up with 86,400 seconds a day, and each of those seconds are expended. You cannot get them back. So if you have dreams, if you want to pursue your dreams, whatever they may look like, consider how are you spending those seconds, those precious seconds that you can never recover. and be honest enough to look at yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, I just binge watched 4 hours of Netflix, and hey, that's fine. If that's your thing and that fills your sails and whatnot. But if it's not getting you closer to your dream, then consider, was that really a worthy investment of my most precious asset? And if you reflect on this, you can start making decisions for your life. The second thing I would say is don't be afraid to take the leap. Like at some point in time, you've got to jump off the cliff. It's like when you've climbed up to the top of this epic hill, this cliffside, and there's this water down below, and you're faced with two options. You can take the crawl of shame back down the cliff, or you can jump, right? But if you decide to jump at some point in time, you've got to take the action and you've got to take the leap, because you can make all the decisions in the world for your life, but if you don't take action, nothing's going to change. Nothing will change. So action must follow decision. That's the second thing I would say to you. The third thing I would say is don't believe the media hype. Like, talk to the people who are doing it in the areas that you want to go. And that's like, hey, I want to go visit, Iran. That may sound insane to most Americans, right? Why don't you talk to somebody who's just visited Iran and ask them what they think, right? Before you go making a decision, and don't let the media influence you, but let somebody who's there, who's just recently done it, let them tell you and inform you. And don't be afraid to reach out to travelers, because as I'm sure Jason knows, most travelers love to share their stories because it's what life is all about. And the last thing that I want to say is you came into this world naked. Everybody listening to this podcast, and you're going to leave this world naked. Life is not about stuff. Stuff is a poor substitute for experiences. And at the end of the day, when all is said and done, the only thing that you're going to have are the memories that you made, the experiences that you had along the way, and the legacy that you leave behind. And I think that when you reflect on that, it starts to inform what you're doing. And Jason, you're leaving an amazing legacy through your podcast, because millions of people have listened to your podcast and millions more will be blessed. And if for some reason something tragic happened and you weren't with us tomorrow, this lives on and this is your legacy. And this is important, right? So it's special. But it's memories, experiences, and legacy. That's really what counts. You could get all the stuff in the world, but you're not going to take it with you. So why not focus on those things that fill your sails? Why not pursue your dreams? Why not take the action, take the risk, and go out and do something incredible that you can look back on and say, wow, I did that. Like, I lived that, I've told Brittany many times, I said, you know what, babe? You drove to Peru. Nobody can ever take that away from you because it's already a done deal. You know what I mean? You like, nobody can take, like, if our travel stopped today, Jason, if they were done today, nobody could ever take that away from her, that she drove to Peru.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's very cool. And I've so enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoyed these seconds. They were well spent. I certainly enjoyed them. I appreciate all the advice and, of course, the offer to everybody listening to get in touch if they have any questions. Let's do it again soon in person next time, I hope. Sounds like we got a lot more to talk about. We're just scratching the surface. I want to respect your time, and I appreciate it. Thanks again, Eric.
I'm thankful for you, Jason, and I hope that anybody listening to this podcast takes me at my word and reaches out if you guys have questions. Like I said, don't be shy. Chase your dreams.
Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the day. There you have it. Thank you very much to Eric for taking the time to chat, and congrats once again to him and Brittany for their Nomad anniversary, and of course, Caspian. Sounds like they've had some incredible adventures out there on the road. And you heard at the top the media perception of places and how they sensationalize things. And I know we like to be informed as travelers, but we can't help ourselves sometimes with the media influence, good or bad. It seems to have an impact on us, even though we may intellectually know that an entire country isn't necessarily dangerous just because one thing happened. And there's a lot to unpack around this. I mean, there are entire college courses about media studies and all that sort of stuff. So we don't have time in the outro here to unpack, the media narratives of countries and travel. But I can share a quick statistic because statistics are facts. And I went on the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, government organization in America, tried to find some stats on how tourists die abroad. And I found a page titled Injury and Trauma. And it says here in 2017 and 2018, and I know this was a while ago, but it still gives you an idea, I think, of how things can go down out there on the road. Less than 1,500 U.S. citizens died from non-natural causes in foreign countries. That is excluding deaths in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Motor vehicle crashes, not crime or terrorism, are the number one cause of non-natural deaths among citizens living, working, or traveling abroad. That was a full quote. I can link up to this in the show notes. And then it goes on to say travel destinations might lack emergency care that approximates U.S. standards. Trauma centers capable of providing care for serious injuries are uncommon outside of urban areas, if they exist at all. Make travelers aware of their increased risk for injuries when traveling or residing internationally, particularly in low and middle income countries, and take preventative steps to reduce the chances of serious injury. And so I'll stop there. But the point is, you can see the point just from the statistics. Again, these were some years ago, but I'm sure the statistics haven't changed all that much in favor of, crime and terrorism being the number one killer over motor vehicle crashes, for example. Or getting sick. I mean, these are the things that you want to take precautions for. It's not like things can't happen, but the things that are most likely to happen is maybe you will get ill and you'll need to get to a hospital, or, there are a lot of moped accidents and vehicle crashes and things like that, which of course can happen anywhere, but sometimes some places the driving and everything is a little bit more insane. I remember being in a shared van in Guatemala once, and this guy was just flying around these blind curves. I'm just like, if one person's coming the other way, we're all dead. I don't know how it didn't happen, but things like that can be scary. And so I'm just bringing this up because it sort of drives the point home that Eric was making. We don't necessarily need to go to mass media for our viewpoints on what a place is. Perhaps it's worth our time to dig in a little deeper and to find out what the facts are. Not the sensational stories, but what the facts are. This can be helpful when you're trying to decide if you want to go to a place and you think maybe it's not for you. It might be good to just take a step back and think, am I saying this because of what I've seen on the news? Is this just sort of subconsciously ingrained in me, or is it actually true that this isn't a good place to go? And it may be in that case. Maybe it's not the place to go or not the place to go for you, and that's okay. But I just wanted to bring this stuff up to wrap it up. Since we started at the top with that, might as well finish up with that. And I have one more thing to share. A lovely listener voicemail that'll leave you on a positive note and something we can all do. Give this a listen.
Hello, Jason. I'm Stella from Chile. I was already listening your episode with the new tourist, and I feel so touched because I'm a big and solo and female big traveler. I was listening your episode and remembering my own experiences in Morocco, in Dubai, in Spain, in Portugal, in France, even, whatever, and conversations. Yes, that's the clue. That's the clue. Never stop chatting with people, by train, by lunch, by everywhere. So thank you to remind me this. Thanks.
Thank you, Estella from Chile, of course, making the point there that it's important to get out and talk to the locals. We can do that anywhere. And I think that is one of the big goals of the podcast here, and really any content I interact with. I always like to just think, okay, is there something here that could remind me of something I should be doing that I'm not, or maybe I could be doing again, or something that I can revisit that I loved before, and perhaps it's been too long since I've done it, things like that. So I'm glad that the podcast she was referring to. That particular episode sparked that for Estella, and I hope this show and some of the other shows give you some food for thought as you go about your travel planning for the future and you go about your day, your daily life today or tomorrow or this week. So I will let you go about your day. You can also leave me a voicemail. I have a link to that box in the show notes. Easy to do. I'll leave you with this quote from Jidua Krishnamurti, who said, quote, "Knowing the cause of something is not going to help you to be free of it." End quote. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.